Then there was another rumor that she was not only pregnant, but potentially pregnant by a young baller, basketball.
That's when NBA icon Shaquille O'Neal ignited a firestorm aiming a blistering attack directly at the man rumored to be Vanessa Bryant's new baby's father. Never one to mince words, the Hall of Famer held nothing back. His scathing remarks instantly set the internet ablaze, leaving everyone asking the same burning question. What could have possibly pushed Shaq to erupt like this? To comprehend the sheer force of that moment and why it captivated the public in a way nothing else in celebrity culture had that year, you have to dissect the entire sordid history. Every damning rumor, every player's name dragged into the gossip, every tense confrontation and every single denial Vanessa was forced to issue against accusations she never should have faced. And the story doesn't start in 2025. It starts in 2003. Because the first time an NBA player was accused of making a move on Vanessa Bryant, Kobe was still there to handle it himself. And the way he shut it down publicly, decisively, with absolutely no ambiguity, became the playbook for every confrontation that came after. Except every sequel was missing the one indispensable element: Kobe. The infamous 2003 incident with Karl Malone remains one of the most chronicled yet least understood sagas in the history of the Lakers. On paper, it seems like a footnote, a simple locker room spat where a veteran player got out of line and paid the professional price. But beneath that surface, it was a defining trial for Kobe and Vanessa's marriage and a fracture point for the Lakers roster during its most chaotic season. It also exposed the specific toxic way NBA culture metabolizes the personal lives of the women in the orbit of its biggest stars. Karl Malone was 40 years old during the 2003 to 2004 season. He had joined the Lakers for a veteran's minimum salary, desperately chasing the championship ring that had eluded his entire Hall of Fame career in Utah. He arrived with a mountain of goodwill, the legendary mailman, one of the greatest power forwards ever grinding for one last shot at glory. And then, during a home game on November 23, 2003, a courtside conversation he had with Vanessa Bryant changed the entire narrative. The exchange began innocently, with Vanessa making some light-hearted small talk. Noticing he was dressed in a cowboy hat and boots, she casually asked him what he was hunting. His response, stated twice for emphasis, was, "I'm hunting for little Mexican girls." The remark landed with the force of a physical blow. Vanessa immediately terminated the conversation and told Kobe what had been said. Kobe's retaliation was instant, public, and left zero room for doubt. He confronted Malone directly and told him in no uncertain terms to stay the hell away from his wife. In Kobe's mind, the question of whether a line had been crossed was settled before the team's next practice even started. This was no small story at the time. It was a media firestorm. Malone's agent, Dwight Manley, admitted the exchange took place, but tried to frame the predatory words as mere banter, insisting no ill will was intended. Malone eventually offered a weak conditional apology over the phone, but pointedly refused to admit his actions were inappropriate. That word, conditional, is crucial. It was not a full apology, not an outright admission that what he'd said to another man's wife was wrong. A 21-year-old woman who had not invited his disgusting advances was completely out of bounds. It was a non-apology wrapped in the excuse that it was just a joke. The implication was clear: people were overreacting, and Kobe and Vanessa were taking things far too seriously. The league absorbed the scandal the way it absorbs most stories like this, with a deafening silence from the top. Endless media speculation about the basketball consequences, and absolutely no meaningful repercussions for the man who caused it. Malone left the Lakers after their finals loss that season. As late as 2015, he told reporters that if Kobe was still angry about it, he was ready to knuckle up. It seemed his so-called apology came with an expiration date. And Vanessa, who was just 21, when a 40-year-old man decided to tell her what kind of prey he was hunting, was left to bear the weight of being made to feel unsafe in the very arena her husband called home by a man who walked away scot-free. The Karl Malone affair should have faded into a footnote, but it didn't because of the narrative that followed. Because the truly twisted part of how that incident was processed inside the locker room, the media, and the fan base is that a huge portion of the blame landed not on Malone, whose predatory behavior started the whole thing, but on Vanessa. She was accused of making it all up. She was accused of escalating a non-issue. She was branded a source of division on a team already shattered by the infamous Shaq and Kobe feud. An entire segment of commentary on that Lakers season treated Vanessa Bryant's report of what happened as a cause of the team's dysfunction, not Malone's actual conduct. Her report of it, that specific, consistent, and culturally embedded instinct to paint Vanessa as the problem whenever something ugly happens near her, is the toxic thread that runs directly from the Karl Malone incident in 2003 all the way to the summer of 2025. The playbook never changes. It doesn't evolve. It just gets louder. Because by 2025, Kobe is no longer alive to stand in anyone's way on her behalf. And the men who promised to fill that void have shown through their choices, their silences, and their social media posts exactly what they meant by protection. Of all the fabrications spun in 2025, none was more vicious, more relentless, or more damaging than the one linking Vanessa Bryant to Jaylen Brown, the 28-year-old All-Star for the Boston Celtics. 17 years separated them, a gap the rumor mill weaponized, twisting the narrative around the widow of one of sport's most revered icons. The architects of the smear campaign knew exactly which strings to pull. Jaylen Brown had reportedly just ended things with former WNBA player Kisra Gondrezick in February of 2025, a detail that made him newly single at the precise moment the machinery of deceit needed a face for the story it was building against Vanessa. The timing, like every other element of the saga, was surgically precise. Starting in June 2025, a tidal wave of viral collages and AI-generated images flooded TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and X. They falsely depicted Vanessa and Brown sharing a dinner date kissing, and in one hyper-viral version showed a clearly pregnant Vanessa standing beside him. Not a single image was authentic. Every last one was later confirmed to be an AI manipulation or a complete digital forgery. But the truth never travels as fast as a lie. Before any debunking could gain traction, the fakes had been shared hundreds of thousands of times. The post claiming Vanessa was expecting her fifth child, a sibling for Natalia Bianca Capri, and their late sister Gianna, had already poisoned the feeds of millions who had no idea they were consuming content engineered specifically to destroy a real person's reputation. By August of 2025, the deepfake assault had reached a fever pitch, forcing people in Vanessa's wider circle to publicly intervene. Aja Wilson's brother, Ronaldo Wilson, directly called out the trolls and the deepfakes, identifying the content as manufactured lies and urging the public to stop amplifying them. Vanessa herself addressed the forgeries on Instagram, labeling them fake news and pleading with her followers not to fall for rumors that had zero basis in reality. Jaylen Brown, for his part, said nothing. A silence that in itself is not out of the ordinary, but one which allowed the rumor to fester, leaving it without a direct denial from the other person at the center of the lie. Vanessa's most powerful response came at the US Open in September 2025, where she was photographed with a drink in her hand, appearing composed and unbothered, though her caption revealed a profound exhaustion simmering just beneath the surface. She wrote, "Keep me posted on how this imaginary pregnancy rumor is coming along." 24 years later, same rumor. 24 years. She was counting back to her earliest days with Kobe when the same destructive machinery under different names and on different platforms had manufactured stories about her body and her choices before she was even legally old enough to drink. The nature of the attack hadn't changed in a quarter century. Only the technology used to spread it had. As of early March 2026, Brown has still not publicly addressed the rumors. Not a single shred of credible evidence of any interaction between Vanessa Bryant and Jaylen Brown, whether romantic, personal, or otherwise, has ever materialized. The entire structure of the rumor was built on doctored images, anonymous social media accounts, and the public's hunger for a story that let them pass judgment on a dead man's widow while consuming content they knew on some level was unverified trash. The Jaylen Brown rumor was a fiction from start to finish, but it was a fiction that had devastatingly real consequences. Because it was this exact rumor, the peak of the 2025 campaign against her, that gave Shaquille O'Neal the on-ramp he used to drive his Instagram live confrontation straight into the center of her life. To understand Shaq's confrontation, you have to understand the history behind it. Shaquille O'Neal has spoken publicly about Vanessa Bryant far more than most people realize. The trajectory of those comments from 2020 through August 2025 tells a story that clashes with the image he has so carefully cultivated as Kobe's loyal protector. To truly grasp why his Instagram live was so explosive, and why the internet's reaction cut so much deeper than typical celebrity gossip, you have to hold the entire timeline in your hands and look at it without blinking. Because that timeline doesn't show a man who stood by Vanessa in her darkest hours, and then simply made one mistake in the summer of 2025. It shows a man who was glaringly absent for 5 consecutive years of her most public struggles, only to suddenly become loudly and publicly present the moment he had something to say about her personal life. In January 2020, in the shattering days after the crash, Shaq's public response was pitch perfect for the moment. He posted on X pouring out his grief, calling Kobe his brother and Gianna his niece, and stating he was sickened by the loss. He gave a profoundly emotional interview where he said he hadn't yet been able to speak with Vanessa, but wanted her to know his family's arms were open and that he hoped her daughters would call him Uncle Shaq, just as his own children had called Kobe Uncle Kobe. At Kobe's memorial, his words brought the entire arena to a standstill. He made promises, specific public on-camera promises, to watch over the girls, to keep the brotherhood alive, to be present for the family in the years to come. The entire world heard those promises. Millions of people saw him make them. And in the immediate aftermath, there was absolutely no reason to doubt him. Then August 2022 arrived. Vanessa was in a courtroom fighting a brutal legal battle against Los Angeles County over deputies who had leaked horrific photographs of her husband and daughter's remains from the crash site images that were passed around at a social gathering, shared on phones as if they were entertainment. During the trial, Shaq gave an interview to ET Online saying he felt for Vanessa and that he couldn't imagine the pain she was enduring. He spoke of the respect they had always shared, claiming every time he saw her, it was all hugs and laughter. He even stated she was doing a great thing by holding people responsible. They were kind words, appropriate words, but they were only words. But those were just words in an interview, not a sworn affidavit in a courtroom. It wasn't a proactive statement of support on his own terms, nor a post on his own social media. Those same platforms he would later turn against her, aiming his millions of followers directly at the case and the woman at its center. There is a vast ocean between offering sympathy when prompted by a reporter and wielding your power to defend someone in their darkest hour. It was a divide Shaq never chose to cross. Not when she sued over the crash photos. Not when Vanessa went to war with a corporate giant like Nike for using her late daughter's name and image without permission. And not when Vanessa's own mother filed a lawsuit against her, choosing national television to air family grievances while her daughter was still drowning in the initial shock of 2 unimaginable losses. Throughout every one of those public on-the-record battles, Shaq's powerful voice was absent. The same voice that would so eagerly go live on Instagram to discuss pregnancy rumors was a ghost when it truly mattered, supportive only when asked but silent when his support could have made a difference. In a 2025 interview with ET, Shaq noted that he checked in on Kobe's mother Pam every month, calling her a wonderful woman and expressing his understanding of her pain, a seemingly genuine and warm gesture. What's telling, however, is that in the very same interview, his remarks about Vanessa were noticeably colder. The woman single-handedly managing the massive weight of Kobe's legacy, running his foundation, overseeing the estate, raising their daughters, and fighting non-stop legal battles, received only a tiny fraction of the warmth Shaq offered to Pam Bryant. This was the same Pam Bryant whose relationship with Vanessa had been notoriously strained for decades, and whose own husband was once sued by their son to prevent the unauthorized sale of his most personal mementos. And then came August of 2025. The rumors about Jaylen Brown were reaching a fever pitch. The podcast world was buzzing. The internet's rumor mill was churning at maximum capacity, and Vanessa had already shot down the story multiple times, denials the public either never saw or simply chose to ignore. And into that firestorm, fully aware that false rumors about her personal life were being used as a weapon to discredit her, Shaq started a live broadcast, and instead of using that immense power to expose the deep fakes, to label the rumor as a complete fabrication and point his audience to Vanessa's own clear denials, he did the exact opposite. He entertained the rumors as if they held water. He performed disappointment for his audience. He presented a scenario where a widow dating a younger man was a direct betrayal of Kobe's memory. He gave the lie the one thing it needed to explode from the dark corners of the internet into the mainstream media. Accounts from that August 2025 Instagram Live described Shaq's tone as being thick with disapproval, the entire performance implying that a new relationship or a pregnancy, if real, would be an ultimate act of disrespect to the Bryant name and a betrayal of Kobe's legacy. He alluded to a young NBA star without ever saying a name. But in a media storm that had already relentlessly targeted Jaylen Brown, it served as a clear signal to his followers that the rumors were credible enough to be taken seriously by an insider. He never presented it as if he were concerned for Vanessa. He presented it as concern for Kobe, for his legacy, for his memory, for his name. In that narrative, Vanessa wasn't a person to be protected. She was the danger. The reaction from Vanessa's inner circle was reportedly immediate and explosive. Sources say she privately called out the staggering hypocrisy, pointing to every single fight she had endured without a word of support from him. Every court appearance he never made. Every public assault he never tried to stop. Every moment she stood alone to protect Kobe's legacy, while the very men who claimed to be his brothers stood by and watched in silence. Insiders claimed she was particularly incensed about where Shaq was when she battled the county over the graphic crash photos, when she took on Nike for using Gigi's image, and when her own mother dragged her through the mud on national television. These weren't vague accusations. They were specific documented grievances. The fact that the self-proclaimed protector of the family had no real defense for his absence completely changed how the world saw his public attack. That one connection, the link between the photographer who snapped the image that started the fire and a PR firm tied to Shaq's own brand, is the structural key to this entire affair. And it's the one detail that the major news outlets seemed to completely overlook. The original picture from a Malibu brunch, the one described in the very first blog post that floated the pregnancy rumor. The image that went viral by description alone, though it was never publicly seen, was reportedly captured by an individual with documented business connections to Shaq's inner circle. That is not a coincidence that can be easily explained away. It is a provable link between the story's origin and the man who would give it the celebrity endorsement it needed to become a global headline. The moment the live broadcast went viral online, detectives began to dig, and what they found buried in Shaq's social media activity made his concerned uncle persona look like a complete fraud. Screenshots quickly surfaced that showed Shaq had been interacting with gossip accounts that had been pushing false stories about Vanessa for months. His betrayal wasn't shouted from the rooftops. It was a quiet endorsement of posts that called her loyalty to Kobe's legacy into question, a subtle co-signing of comments branding her ungrateful for severing ties with Nike. These weren't accidents. Liking a post is a deliberate act. Making a comment is a conscious decision. And when fans unearthed and assembled this pattern of digital choices, it painted the damning portrait of a man who had been silently cheering on Vanessa's public degradation for months, only to feign concern on a live broadcast. When challenged on his activity, Shaq claimed he couldn't recall every post he'd liked, insisting he was only looking out for his brother's family, but the court of public opinion wasn't buying it. In the days that followed, the evidence began to vanish from his profile. Several iconic championship photos of him and Kobe, once adorned with captions about brotherhood, loyalty, and eternal family, were quietly deleted. They disappeared gradually, not all at once, in the way a person erases content they now realize is proof of a narrative they desperately want to escape. An ex-Lakers employee then brought a dark secret to light, leaking details of private talks among NBA veterans where Vanessa's refusal to act as a pliant symbol of Kobe's legacy rather than as an independent woman directing her own life was bluntly labeled the Vanessa problem. The issue was never that she had made a mistake. The issue, as defined by those who coined the phrase, was that she kept succeeding on her own terms, never asking for permission from the men who believed their connection to Kobe gave them a say in how his memory was honored. She battled Nike and she won. She battled the county and she won. She ran the estate. She sustained the foundation. She raised their daughters. At every single turn, she refused to make her journey about the men circling Kobe's legacy who were impatiently waiting for a personal invitation to its core. That is the real Vanessa problem. It has nothing to do with pregnancy rumors or other players. The problem is that she is flawlessly executing the promise she made to Kobe, and she's doing it without needing anyone's permission or assistance. The facts versus the fiction. Once the chaotic summer of 2025 came to a close, after Shaq's Instagram tirade had faded from headlines and the Jaylen Brown deepfakes were exposed as frauds, after the hashtag wars subsided and the fiery podcast takes were forgotten, and the world had fixated on its next scandal, the truth of what really occurred was crystal clear. There was no relationship, no pregnancy, and no credible source ever confirmed any romantic link between Vanessa Bryant and another NBA player. Every single rumor, from the initial explosion in June of 2025 to the resurgent shares in February of 2026, had been meticulously checked and proven to be utterly baseless. Investigations confirmed the pregnancy claims were completely unsubstantiated. The viral photographs were identified as AI-generated forgeries, and the so-called reports were fabricated from beginning to end. Each accusation, every manipulated image, every anonymous insider tip, it was all a complete invention. But facts alone cannot erase the scars. The harm inflicted by a lie doesn't just vanish because the lie has been disproven. Vanessa Bryant was forced to spend the majority of 2025 fighting shadows, issuing denials through memes, Instagram stories, and veiled captions. Even having to appear at events holding a drink simply to prove she wasn't pregnant, a defense against accusations that never should have been made. She endured a year where her body, her personal life, and her private decisions were treated like topics for a public tribunal by people with no right to judge them. She was publicly attacked by a man who had vowed to be her protector. And she had to watch as the powerful engines of the NBA and sports media framed this confrontation not as the harassment it was, but as legitimate entertainment. It was a celebrated man leveraging his massive platform to publicly question a widow's faithfulness to her late husband's memory. Her real fights are a matter of public record. The tangible, legally verified actions Vanessa Bryant has taken to safeguard the legacies of Kobe and Gigi while under relentless assault are not up for debate. They are documented facts. She sued Los Angeles County when sheriff's deputies circulated gruesome photos from the crash site and secured a major settlement. She sat with unwavering resolve in that courtroom, forced to hear testimony about images of her husband's and daughter's remains being passed around at a party. She never backed down. She refused to settle early just to keep the horrific details private. She saw it through to the end, and she prevailed. She cut the Mamba brand's ties with Nike, refusing to let her late daughter's name be exploited for profit without her approval, a move that cost her significant financial power, but defended the sanctity of Gianna's memory in the way Vanessa felt she deserved. She has kept the Mamba and Mambacita Sports Foundation operating without interruption since Kobe's passing, channeling millions of dollars to the very youth athletic initiatives that Kobe and Gigi were so driven to create. She has raised 3 daughters under the crushing weight of public scrutiny, all while building a shield of privacy around them, protecting them from the same toxic machine that has preyed on their mother. She has done every bit of this without a partner by her side. Following Shaq's viral broadcast, several of the league's top all-stars quietly contacted Vanessa, admitting their shame over the NBA's deafening silence throughout her public struggles over the preceding 5 years. According to sources inside the Bryant family's circle, 5 all-stars sent her personal messages of support. They confessed their regret for not defending her when she fought the county over the leaked photos, for not taking her side in the conflict with Nike, and for failing to use their influence when her own mother was taking her to court. But the apologies were kept private. Their support was rendered invisible to the world. It reveals the true measure of the NBA's institutional backbone, showing just how far it will go to stand with Vanessa Bryant when doing so actually costs something. This stands in stark contrast to saying the right words for the cameras when the lights are on and the moment demands a performance. Every single rumor that has ever connected Vanessa to an NBA player, stretching from Karl Malone's courtside comments in 2003 to the Jaylen Brown deepfakes of 2025, has been built on the exact same foundation. A man or a group of them deciding that her body and her private life are fair game for public consumption. The packaging simply changes to fit the platform and the decade. What was dismissed as locker room talk in 2003 was rebranded as concern for Kobe's legacy in 2025. But the architecture of the attack remains identical. Her body is debated as if it were public property, and her choices are scrutinized against a double standard that no man in her position ever has to face. And if she dares to object by issuing a denial, posting a meme, or being seen at the US Open enjoying a cocktail, or gives any reply that refuses to legitimize their commentary, she's immediately branded as defensive, disrespectful, or not grateful enough for their supposed concern. The Jaylen Brown rumors specifically pull back the curtain on how this smear machine operates in the age of social media. The entire fabrication started with AI-generated imagery, a technology that didn't exist in Karl Malone's time and has completely changed how quickly and devastatingly a person's reputation can be destroyed. A post on Threads claimed a new photo captured Vanessa Bryant and Brown in a kiss, a claim later exposed as a total fabrication created by AI with zero basis in fact. Yet the fake image had already spread like wildfire. The subsequent correction barely made a ripple compared to the tidal wave of the original lie. This imbalance, the lightning speed of a vicious lie versus the crawl of its correction, is not some unfortunate glitch in our information age. It is the very feature that the architects of these rumors depend on to succeed. They are counting on the fake image to travel faster than the truth. They know that first impression will forever stain the public's perception in a way no retraction can fully erase. Their goal isn't truth, it's a feeling. And the feeling they are engineering is one that benefits those who need Vanessa Bryant to be seen as unfaithful, reckless, or ungrateful. The lesser rumors that tried to link Vanessa to men like Rob Pelinka or Pau Gasol have all been proven to be either completely platonic friendships or outright fabrications. Pau Gasol, a true and steadfast friend of the family whom Vanessa's daughters call Uncle Pau, was targeted by tabloids precisely because his genuine closeness to the family gave their manufactured stories a thin veneer of plausibility. Rob Pelinka, who has been a professional and legal ally in managing Kobe's estate, was subjected to the same kind of speculation for the very same reason. In both situations, the proximity born from real, legitimate bonds of trust and professional collaboration was intentionally twisted by the rumor mill into supposed evidence of a romance. The tactic never changes. Single out the men in Vanessa's life who are truly there for her, the ones she trusts, and weaponize their presence to create a scandal. Frame the support system she built as a secret affair. Make the very people who showed up in her darkest hours seem like villains. The complete unvarnished truth of the NBA community's relationship with Vanessa Bryant is not a flattering one. A former Laker made disgusting comments to her on the court and faced zero professional repercussions. Another, the very man who made the loudest public vows to protect her family, spent months entertaining gossip meant to tear her down, then had the audacity to confront her on Instagram Live about a pregnancy rumor. This while her own social media told the story of the support she never got from him when it mattered most. 5 active All-Stars sent her private messages of apology that they were too afraid to say out loud. And the league as a whole, one of the richest, most powerful and culturally dominant sports organizations on earth, has observed this all from a safe and profitable distance, offering hollow thoughts and prayers in interviews, but never once leveraging its immense institutional power to defend the woman who has carried the name of its most beloved icon alone for 5 years. As of early March of 2026, Vanessa Bryant has not confirmed a single romantic relationship, has not announced a pregnancy, and is dedicating her life to her work with the Mamba and Mambacita Sports Foundation. She has met none of this circus with the public performance of grief that so many seem to demand and has delivered every single denial with the calm, unapologetic energy of a woman who is done living for the approval of people who will never be happy for her anyway. She will not be made smaller. She will not be controlled. She refuses to be reduced to a symbol of perpetual mourning, just to make people who are nowhere to be found when she needed them feel comfortable. And whatever she chooses to do with her own life, whenever she chooses to do it, and whoever she chooses to trust with that piece of her heart, will be a choice she makes on her own terms, free from the judgment of men who keep taking turns deciding she owes them an answer. Thanks for watching. The rain turned the final lap into a death wish. He gripped the wheel knuckles white, the rival's engine screaming beside him. It wasn't about the trophy anymore. It was about surviving the turn.